Hi, today we're going to go over the uBACCH filter from BACCH Labs. Now, uBACCH stands for Universal Bach, and essentially that means that anyone with a stereo setup or stereo device can experience a BACCH filter with just a little bit of tuning. And this will come extremely close to when we actually go and measure a bespoke filter with microphones in our ears for a specific device or specific setup. And this just takes a little bit of ear grease, if you will. Maybe you won't. Maybe we shouldn't. Anyway, it's super cool, so let's get into it. Now, here I'm using BACCH DSP, but the fundamentals of uBACCH will be the same whether we're using BACCH DSP, we're using a plugin, we're using a demo app, or we're even using uBACCH integrated into another device or another app. It should be about the same and it should be pretty simple. There's always going to be, first off, some kind of configuration or setup screen. So for BACCH DSP, which I'm in now, I'm going to click on this actual uBACCH module here, then that'll open this up for us. And when I click ARM, we actually are able to tune this. For BACCH DSP users, to continue forwards with how I'm going to describe this, you actually want to go ahead and click by ear down here. If you're within the demo app or using a plugin, it'll already be set up to be used by ear, which pretty much means by the angle. So, secondly, within this setup, there will be some kind of slider or knob to adjust the angle. And that is here within uBACCH. And as you can see, the speakers are bouncing out. That will be a slider in our demo app and usually a slider within our plugins and whatnot. And then there will also be some kind of pink noise or white noise generator. And this is to help you tune really quickly. So before we actually do that and tune a filter, let me first explain why we're changing an angle and how uBACCH is set up. So uBACCH is actually a series of filters made with virtual speakers. And they're made at every angle, every half-span angle from 1 to 90 degrees pretty much. The half-span angle is actually, if you imagine a stereo setup or you look at this one on the screen, if it is a perfect equilateral triangle, same distance between you and the speakers and between the speakers themselves, that will create angles at each corner of that triangle of 60 degrees. So at the actual user, the half-span angle, you guessed it, half of that, so 30 degrees. Now, as soon as you start to bring that in, it gets smaller, bring it out, it gets wider. So for me personally, I'm at probably 35 degrees. The film configuration, when you have your front left, front right, is closer to 22.5. As you get into laptops, you know, you're gonna get somewhere from like 12 to 18 if they have the speakers on the other side of the keyboard. Tablets would be like 12 to 15 or 16. A soundbar would be maybe 10 to 14. Those are all ballpark measurements, but that's like about the half-span angle you'll be looking at for those different devices. So how do you actually pick a number? You don't have to guess, I promise. It's actually really easy. There's two ways. One way is if you actually know the dimensions of your setup, you could just plug those in. So let me show you here. If I actually go by tape measure, and there'll be somewhere to input this, I can actually change these distances, and then I'll get an approximate half-span angle. But there's an easier way to do it. And it actually is more efficient because you're doing it by ear, so it's going to inherently turn out better. And that is to play the pink noise and to turn the knob. And as we play it out of one side, let's say the left speaker, we're going to turn this knob. And as we turn the knob, it's actually going to run that pink noise through the different uBACCH filters at the different angles that we're selecting. As you get close to the proper angle for your setup, the pink noise will move from being ambiguous or at that actual speaker to outside of it. And depending on your setup, you might get the sound to come all the way up to your ear, which is really good. So you basically want the sound to be as clean and outside the speaker as possible, and ideally up towards your ear. And that'll depend on the setup. But if you're able to get sound up to your ear, that means you can pretty much get sound everywhere else around you, because that's the hardest place to get it to. Now I'm going to go ahead and play pink noise through the video, and I'm going to tune this uBACCH filter. And as I change the angle, you're going to hear on your own device how that sound changes. And at some point, ideally, that pink noise, that ball of pink noise will pop outside of your device and maybe come up to your ear. And then that'll be your ballpark of what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to start at 40 degrees as it shows here at the very kind of higher end of the span, and then go down all the way down. Okay, it's that simple. So you're essentially turning the knob until that ball of pink noise sounds best to you. You might be between a couple different angles depending on if you're listening to the left side or the right side. That's pretty normal, honestly. And if they're close to each other, that means you're in a ballpark where it's going to be good no matter what. So I would say maybe split the difference, or listen for which angle actually has the least amount of like leakage to the other speakers. Let's say you're playing on the left side and the sound's coming out here, but you actually still hear a coming from somewhere else. You want it to be as cleanly as possible coming from that source outside the speaker. So that can be another benchmark for you deciding between a couple different angles. But it's really easy to tune, it's really easy to change. So as you're listening to music, you can just go ahead and change that angle and see if it sounds better to you. So uBACCH allows pretty much any symmetrical stereo device or setup to run a BACCH filter with minimal tuning. But you always want to be aware of what kind of processing is going on in that device. So if you're listening to a soundbar or you're listening to a laptop, I'd be aware of potentially other spatial audio solutions or even just other kind of virtualizers that are within there. One way to test that really easily is actually to use the uBACCH module. You can go ahead and disable 3D processing in most of the different apps that are there. So you're just hearing that pink noise just from one side without a BACCH filter. When you do that, you should just hear it from that left speaker. So what I would do is I would turn on pink noise, play it out of the left speaker, and listen to the right speaker. Literally pick up the device and be like, is anything coming out of here? That's the easiest way to tell if there's some kind of extra processing going on or if you really have a clean stereo image. So the uBACCH filters assume clean, point source, symmetrical speakers. The further you deviate from that, the more likely you are to get less of a 3D effect. That being said, it's a really impressive way to get fantastic spatial audio out of a lot of different devices. So that's all for the video today. Give it a try. Let us know how it works for you. Feel free to comment any questions you have below and we'll get back to them. If you have a device that you really want to get BACCH spatial audio out of and uBACCH isn't doing it and you think you need us to measure it and add it to the library so you can use it, let us know as well and we will add it to our growing list of devices to measure. But that's it, guys. So thank you so much. Cheers and happy listening.